It was a Thursday like any other in Maple Hollow, a quiet town where not much ever happened. The streets were bathed in the soft gold of early morning light, and most homes were just starting to stir. At 7:15 a.m., Melanie Cross, a 28-year-old mother of two, was already moving through her well-worn morning routine. She poured cereal into bowls, braided her daughter's hair, zipped up her son's jacket, and packed lunches with quick precision. Her modest rental home was small but clean, filled with toys and the happy clutter of young children. Melanie was known among her neighbors as reliable, soft-spoken, and endlessly devoted to her kids. She had no family in town except her younger sister, Riley, who lived in the next neighborhood over. By 7:40 a.m., Melanie had the kids strapped into the back seat of her white Honda Civic. They listened to children's songs as they drove the familiar route to Little Steps, the daycare she trusted. She dropped them off just before 7:50 a.m., signing them in as usual and giving each of them a quick hug. The staff would later say nothing seemed unusual. Melanie smiled, waved goodbye, and walked briskly to her car. She was wearing jeans, a simple blue sweatshirt, and sneakers. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun. No one noticed anything odd. Melanie was supposed to start her shift at Crumb & Company, a family-run bakery downtown, by 8:30 a.m. She had worked there for nearly 3 years, never late, never absent without calling. When 9 a.m. rolled around and she still hadn't shown up, her coworker Jenna texted her. The message was marked "Delivered," but never read. By noon, Melanie's phone had gone straight to voicemail. Her manager called her emergency contact, her sister Riley, who, alarmed by the call, drove to the daycare to pick up the kids. They were still there, waiting, confused as to why their mom hadn't come back. At first, no one wanted to assume the worst. Maybe Melanie's car had broken down. Maybe she had fallen ill. But as the hours passed and there was still no sign of her, the concern turned into something heavier. Riley checked Melanie's house. The door was locked. Nothing looked disturbed. Her bed was made. Dishes from breakfast were still in the sink. Her charger was plugged in beside the couch, but her phone was missing. Her handbag, keys, and jacket were also gone, suggesting she had left for the day as planned. But she never returned. At 7:15 that evening, nearly 12 hours since Melanie had last been seen, her sister filed a missing person report. The police took the case seriously from the beginning. A young mother vanishing in broad daylight wasn't something Maple Hollow was used to. Officers began asking questions, reviewing traffic cams, and tracking her bank activity. The search began, but no one knew that the mystery of Melanie Cross's disappearance was only just beginning. The morning after Melanie Cross was reported missing, the Maple Hollow Police Department began their search in earnest. Missing persons cases involving young children often get priority, and Melanie's responsible reputation gave them reason to act fast. Officers began by retracing her known movements. The daycare confirmed she had dropped off her kids around 7:45 a.m. Surveillance cameras at the front door caught her walking in with the children, signing them in, and then leaving the building alone. Her white Honda Civic was seen pulling out of the lot and turning onto Maple Avenue. What happened after that became the central question. Using traffic cameras positioned along Maple Avenue, investigators were able to follow her car's path for a few more minutes. At 7:58 a.m., it was spotted turning into a quiet residential neighborhood just a few miles from the daycare. It wasn't a place Melanie was known to frequent. The neighborhood, known as Ridgeview, was made up of older homes and a few abandoned properties. She had no friends or family in the area. That turn would be the last time her vehicle was seen in motion. Later that afternoon, during a canvassing sweep, officers located Melanie's Honda Civic parked at the side of a residential street in Ridgeview. The car was locked, undamaged, and sitting in a legal spot. It looked like it had been parked there intentionally. Her purse was on the front passenger seat, zipped shut. Inside it were her wallet, ID, and a half-full bottle of water. The keys were not in the ignition, and her phone was not inside. There were no signs of a struggle. No broken windows. No blood. It looked as if Melanie had parked the car and walked away. Detectives began knocking on doors and speaking with residents. A few people remembered seeing the car, but no one recalled when exactly it had arrived. One homeowner, however, had a doorbell camera pointed toward the street. The footage, time-stamped at 8:06 a.m., showed Melanie's car slowly pulling up to the curb. 10 minutes later, a figure wearing a gray hoodie and dark pants walked past the same camera in the direction away from the car. The person's face was hidden, and they kept their head down. Investigators couldn't confirm if it was Melanie or someone else. The footage was grainy and distant, but it was the only possible lead they had. As the day turned to night, the community grew restless. Local news began covering the story, showing pictures of Melanie and asking anyone with information to come forward. Her sister, Riley, pleaded with the public through a tearful press statement. Flyers were printed and posted around town. Volunteers helped with a door-to-door search effort through Ridgeview and nearby wooded areas, but nothing was found. With each passing hour, the lack of clues became more troubling. Police reviewed Melanie's phone records and financial activity. Her bank account hadn't been used since the morning she disappeared. Her phone pinged once at 8:02 a.m. near the Ridgeview neighborhood, then went dark. There were no outgoing calls or messages. No alerts. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. As investigators struggled to find new leads, they turned their focus to Melanie's private life, hoping something might explain why a devoted mother would vanish in the middle of an ordinary day. At first, nothing stood out. Melanie had no criminal history, no known enemies, and no history of substance abuse. She wasn't active on social media, and her online presence was limited to parenting forums and recipe blogs. But as detectives dug deeper, small inconsistencies began to surface, details that hinted at a more complex situation behind her calm, dependable exterior. One of the first clues came from her bank records. Over the past 3 months, Melanie had made several large cash withdrawals from her account, amounts too high and too frequent to go unnoticed. There were no obvious reasons for the money to be missing. She wasn't planning a vacation, didn't have expensive hobbies, and was known to live on a tight budget. Friends described her as cautious with money, always saving for emergencies or her children's future. But now, thousands of dollars were gone without explanation. Suspicious, police began examining her browsing history. They discovered that Melanie had spent hours researching topics like how to disappear, how to start over with a new identity, and safe places for women to relocate. She had also visited websites related to identity changes and alternative living arrangements. None of this fit the image others had of her. It was clear that Melanie had been planning something quietly, methodically, and alone. The most shocking discovery came from a rented storage unit found under a different name, Michelle Reed, at a facility just outside of town. The unit had been paid in cash for 6 months in advance. Inside were several boxes containing clothing, a fake passport, prepaid cell phones, and a notebook filled with hand-drawn maps, names of cities, and schedules. There was also a burner phone with only one contact saved. That number, when traced, led to a prepaid line that had gone inactive shortly after Melanie disappeared. Whoever owned it had never registered their identity. The storage unit painted a different picture of Melanie Cross. It suggested that she had been planning to leave her life behind. Investigators theorized that she may have feared someone or something. But if she had been planning to escape, why would she leave her kids behind at daycare? And why would she take her regular phone with her, only to turn it off an hour later? None of it made sense. Detectives considered the possibility that Melanie may have tried to vanish willingly, but something had gone wrong. Perhaps someone had discovered her plan. Or maybe she had trusted the wrong person. The existence of the burner phone hinted at secret communication, someone on the other end helping her, or possibly controlling her. But without access to messages or call logs, the identity of that person remained unknown. As questions mounted, the investigation grew colder. Each new discovery only deepened the mystery. Melanie Cross was no longer just a missing person. She had become the center of a strange and unsettling puzzle, one that seemed carefully constructed to hide the truth. Nearly 3 weeks after Melanie Cross vanished, the case took a devastating turn. On a Sunday afternoon, a pair of hikers walking through a wooded area 15 miles outside Maple Hollow came across a foul odor and disturbed soil near an old trail rarely used. Curious and concerned, they dug lightly with a stick and uncovered the edge of a tarp. Fearing the worst, they contacted the local sheriff's office. Within hours, crime scene investigators were on site, and what they found confirmed the town's deepest fears. The body of a woman was buried in a shallow grave, wrapped tightly in a blue tarp and covered with a thin layer of dirt and fallen leaves. Forensic analysis later confirmed the identity. It was Melanie Cross. The discovery shattered any remaining hope that she had fled on her own or would return safely. The autopsy revealed she had died from blunt force trauma to the head, and there were signs that she had been struck more than once. The coroner estimated her time of death to be within 24 hours of her disappearance. It was officially ruled a homicide. Investigators returned to the one lead they had, the burner phone found in Melanie's storage unit. With assistance from federal agents, they traced its last signal to a motel on the edge of county lines. Security footage from that night showed a man entering a room around 9 p.m. He stayed for just one night, paid in cash, and left before sunrise. His appearance was vague, average build, dark hair, and wearing a hoodie that concealed most of his face, but still enough for detectives to release stills from the footage to the public, hoping someone might recognize him. A few days later, a tip came in. A woman named Cassie, who had worked at the bakery with Melanie, recognized the man in the photo as Jordan Bales, a former dishwasher who had been fired months earlier after a series of angry outbursts. Cassie recalled that Jordan had once shown a strange interest in Melanie, often watching her from a distance but never saying much. After his termination, no one had heard from him again. A background check revealed troubling details. Jordan had a criminal record in another state for assault and had changed addresses multiple times in recent years. Detectives quickly attempted to locate him, but his last known residence, a small rental unit in a neighboring town, was already abandoned. Inside, they found trash left behind, empty bottles, and an unmade bed, but no clues of where he had gone. A search of nearby pawn shops, bus stations, and surveillance feeds turned up nothing. It was as if Jordan had simply disappeared into thin air. The possibility that Melanie had trusted Jordan with her plan to escape, or that he had inserted himself into her life under the guise of helping, became the dominant theory. Perhaps she had confided in him, not knowing the danger he posed. The case had transformed from a missing person to a full homicide investigation, with a named suspect now on the run. And while police were closing in, the most haunting part was knowing that Melanie's final hours were still a complete mystery. What she knew, what she feared, and how it had all gone so terribly wrong. Jordan Bales became the most wanted man in the region after being named the prime suspect in Melanie Cross's murder. With his background and connection to her burner phone, investigators were confident they were on the right track. Law enforcement agencies across several states were alerted, and his face was plastered on local news, social media, and missing persons boards. But days turned into weeks, and there was still no sign of him. He had vanished just as completely as Melanie once had, leaving behind only fragments of clues and mounting questions. Then, 2 months later, a breakthrough came unexpectedly. A highway patrol officer in Arizona pulled over a silver sedan for a broken taillight. The driver handed over an out-of-state license, but something felt off. The ID looked legitimate, but the officer noticed signs of nervousness. A quick fingerprint scan revealed the truth. It was Jordan Bales, traveling under a false identity. He was arrested on the spot and transported back to Maple Hollow to face questioning. In custody, Jordan denied murdering Melanie. At first, he claimed he hadn't seen her in months. But faced with overwhelming evidence, DNA on the tarp used to wrap her body, security footage from the motel, and his connection to the burner phone, he finally broke. His confession shocked investigators, not because of what he said, but because of what it suggested. According to Jordan, Melanie had approached him in secret weeks before her disappearance. She had grown paranoid, believing someone was watching her and that she and her children were in danger. She begged for help disappearing, and he agreed to assist, for a price. Jordan claimed he provided her with fake documents, transportation plans, and guidance on how to vanish. He said she stored items in the storage unit under his direction and that everything was going according to plan until they met in Ridgeview on the morning she disappeared. That meeting, he said, turned violent. They argued over something he refused to share with police, and when she threatened to call everything off, he panicked and struck her. It was a heat-of-the-moment act, he claimed, not premeditated. Terrified of being caught, he buried her in the woods and fled town. Though Jordan's confession filled in some blanks, it raised even more. If Melanie had indeed believed she was being followed, who was behind it? Why hadn't she gone to the police? And what exactly was the argument about that led to her death? Investigators found no evidence of another person involved, and no threatening messages or notes were ever uncovered. Some speculated Jordan invented the story about Melanie's fear to shift blame away from himself. Others believed there was more to the story, something Melanie never got the chance to reveal. Jordan Bales was eventually charged and convicted of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But the mystery surrounding Melanie's final months remains unsolved. What started as the case of a missing young mother became a chilling reminder that sometimes the real danger comes from the people who offer to help. And sometimes, even with a confession, the full truth never comes to light.